Hello there friends and welcome. For today's Pathfinder guide I have another very special, very versatile build. Also focused on a prestige class. This time a Mystic THEURGE build that can actually cast all of the arcane and also all of the divine spells at the same time. So we have a full wizard and also a full cleric spellbook up to level 9 spells, including either angel or lich spells depending on what path you prefer. When combined with the abundant casting line of mythic abilities, your character will have an absolutely absurd amount of spell slots per level from both your wizard and cleric spellbooks, to truly become the lord of all magic. Mystic THEURGEs even have a very fun feature that lets you eventually share up to level 5 spells between your spellbooks. For example, we'll be able to get even the mythic lich spells on our cleric spellbook. Plus, as with any lich or angel, merged mythic, you'll still retain amazing melee capabilities capable of high melee damage as well, with a fun weapon for extreme critical range and damage, absurd amount of hit points in the case of Lich, more than 1000, or the great defensive angel buffs, high saving throws with complete immunities, both angel and Lich. Armor class wise we won't have a lot, just like my previous Lich King, because you know, it won't matter for this character. To put it simply, with this character you have basically everything you could want in the game. So without further ado, let us get started on our Mystic THEURGE build. Alright, so the key to this build is of course the Mystic THEURGE Prestige class, which lets you combine both arcane and divine spellcasting and increase both of their progressions up to level 10. There is of course a downside, which is the main weakness of Mystic THEURGE. It requires both level 2 arcane spells and level 2 divine spells. What this means is, until you can access this class, you are forced into picking a split between a divine spellcasting class such as cleric or oracle, and then arcane such as wizard or sorcerer. There are many ways of going about this. You can, for example, mix imperial sorcerer, which casts from wisdom, with cleric, that's also a wisdom class, or oracle and then sorcerer, both based on charisma. But I do believe the best way to go about this is actually through prepared casters, so cleric and wizard. And there's actually a lot of reasons for this. First is of course the fact that as prepared casters, both wizard and cleric learn spells faster than spontaneous casters, which does matter for a Mystic THEURGE because, as I said, you'll have to delay your spellcasting progression by at the very least 3 levels. If you go 3 wizard and 3 cleric, that's enough to enter Mystic THEURGE. On the other hand, if you go with a spontaneous caster like Sorcerer and Oracle, it will require 4 levels in both of these classes. Also, if you go with a dual spontaneous caster combo, you will not be able to achieve level 9 spells in both your classes, which kinda defeats some of the fun of the build to me. Second, remember that the prepared spellcasters now actually have faster spellcasting progression even when merging with your mythic, so angel or lich. Because spontaneous casters, when merged, do not receive faster spellcasting for their normal spells, only mythic spells. To put it simply, you'll have way more powerful spells earlier, as a cleric wizard combo. Lastly, the fact you have split stats for your casting abilities doesn't really matter, because overall, the mythic spells, which are the ones you're going to be spamming the most as far as offensive spells, the effects basically work at full power regardless if the enemy saves or not. For the other spellcasting class, you'll mostly be using buffs and utility spells, which also don't care about DC. Anyways, wizard and cleric is by far the best way to go, unless you want to spend a lot of time with a much weaker character. Now, when it comes to the choice between merging with either Lich or Angel, honestly both end up very powerful. I do prefer Lich, however, because the early Lich spells are actually stronger than the Angel ones, so just at level 4 you already have Eyes of the Bodak, Vampiric Blade. Most importantly, at level 5, which we get as soon as we merge with Lich, Exsanguinate for amazing single target damage, Deny Death to outright prevent game overs and death, and of course the infamous Repurpose spell to make almost permanent undead allies out of enemies, even unique bosses. This all comes pretty early in the case of Lich. For Angel, you know, Boltem Storm of Justice comes somewhat later. Lastly, Lich can also enhance your caster level higher because of the Dark Rites abilities, another weakness of Mystic THEURGE that we bypass with this. Plus, of course, the unique undead companions and the skeleton pet. But once again, a Mystic THEURGE Angel is also very powerful. Ideally, you want to start as Wizard and then Exploiter Wizard. If you've watched my previous Immortal Lich King build guide, then you know why Exploiter Wizard is so good anyways. We have the Potent Magic ability as early as level 1 to highly increase our DC, which does matter. Plus, starting as a Wizard is simply easier than Cleric. After all, you have the ever so overpowered Grease spell just at level 1, and then before starting progression into Cleric for MT, you'll also have Glitter Dust. Both of these spells alone, Grease and Glitter Dust, can easily carry your character until around chapter 3 when you merge with Lich for faster spellcasting progression. That's how good they are. So let's go with Wizard and Exploiter Wizard here. When it comes to race, well, it's actually up to you. As always, I prefer to go with humans for the extra feat at the early levels, but this build isn't going to be exactly feat starved. For background, my preferred choice would be the usual Street Urchin and Pickpocket for the extra bonus to initiative, which does matter as a spellcaster. Now, when it comes to your ability points allocation, this is a bit tricky, so this will change a bit depending on whether you want to go Lich or Angel. So if you want to go with Lich, start with 17 Intelligence and 16 Wisdom is more than enough. We can get the rest through Headbands of Mental Perfection that increase both Intelligence and Wisdom, and the Divine spells will be mostly buffs. Meanwhile, if you're going with Angel, 16 Intelligence and 17 Wisdom for the same reasons. For this one in particular, I'll go with Lich, but most of the feat selection and even Mythic ability selection is the same, besides the, unique Mythic ones. Now, Charisma, well, if you're going with Angel, it's kinda useless. If you're going with Lich, it can matter, since eventually we'll get our Charisma modifier added to our hit points. This is just at chapter 5 though, somewhat late in the game, and you can always respec your character after the full Lich transformation anyways. What I like doing here is start with an even split between Strength, Dexterity, Constitution and Charisma. 12 Strength, well, because having a martial weapon on your MT, Wizard Cleric, is actually quite powerful because you can just spam Grease and Glitter Dust, then attack with a rich weapon from behind the enemy, while remaining fully safe and benefiting from the massive debuffs they'll take to armor class, to compensate for our low AB early on. Dexterity, just for attacks of opportunity. Constitution is just, to have some nice hit points, but if you're going with Angel, we can just dump Charisma and get higher Constitution here. Anyways, I'm going with this somewhat even stat split here, just to show you it can still be very effective without having to completely min-max your character. As far as skill points, well, all the lore and knowledge skills no doubt, since we have high wisdom and intelligence. Lastly, I also like the persuasion skill, because this will become a class skill with Mystic THEURGE, and even without high charisma, there's plenty of gear boosts to persuasion. When it comes to your level 1 feats, well, it's kinda the same as the Lich build from before, so Spell Focus, Conjuration. As I've just said, the Conjuration spells early on are so powerful that they can easily carry your character even with delayed spellcasting. Plus, when it comes to Angel, the best Angel spells are also Conjuration, so even better for us. And as for Lich, you can just respec later on into Necromancy, or get the Expanded Arsenal Mythic ability, so your Conjuration focus will apply to Necromancy. Then as a second feat, Martial Weapons Proficiency without a doubt, for the amazing versatility it gives you. Then as a Wizard bonus feat, Greater Spell Focus and Conjuration. And of course, Potent Magic for your first exploit. When it comes to spells, remember that I already have complete guides, both for the best arcane spells and the best divine spells too, that you can check to the side here or in the video description, so I'll keep it simple for now. Grease is a must and the rest are just buffs: Mage Armor, Shield, True Strike, Enlarge Person, and Reduce 2. For deity, there's two choices. If you're going as an angel, then any good aligned deity. Your domains won't really matter much as far as the domain abilities, because you won't get high levels in Cleric. The domains are mostly going to be for spell slots. And if you're going Lich, well, Urgatoa is the best of course, for the nice extra dialogue options. Plus, Strength and War domains have pretty nice spells too as domain slots. Since this character is going Lich, Urgatoa and Neutral Evil, but any evil will work. So now we have to get 3 levels in Exploiter Wizard. For more level 1 spells, Protection from Alignment and Magic Weapon. Then at level 3, I'd get Improved Initiative, as after all we are a full spellcaster with both Divine and Arcane spells, we want to cast them as early as possible to debuff the enemy or deal high damage later on. Then for your first level 2 spells, Glitter Dust without a doubt and Mirror Image for some nice defense. Now from level 4, we'll start progression into Cleric, and the best archetype is Lich THEURGE, no doubt, at least for this build. We don't really lose anything. I mean, we can't cast spells in armor as Lich THEURGE, which you know doesn't matter because our arcane spells as a wizard have arcane spell failure, so we can't use armor for them anyways. Now, starting from level 4, you'll want to increase either intelligence or wisdom, depending on if you went Lich or Angel. As far as domains, if you went Lich, strength and war. For your level 5 feat, I'd personally pick combat reflexes, just so we have more melee power for extra attacks, which is quite powerful with Grease, because you know, Grease knocks the enemies down, and when they try to get up, you get a free attack of opportunity. There's not much of a point into picking meta magic feats at the moment, because we can only cast up to level 2 cleric and wizard spells, so let's delay them for a bit. At level 6 we have our last level in cleric for the moment. And at level 7 we can at last turn progression into Mystic THEURGE for dual spellcasting progression. If you went with a spontaneous caster combo, well, it would take until level 9. For our level 7 feat, this is when I would pick Heighten Spell, as we are just a single level from learning level 3 spells in both our classes. And for more wizard spells, False Life, and I'd go with Blur here, since we are more about buffing. Of course, you'll be continuing Mystic THEURGE progression until around level 15. For your first level 3 spells at level 8, well, Haste of course, and then Heroism. And we also get the Cleric spells here. As a prepared caster, we learn all of them at once, which is great for a Mystic THEURGE. At level 9, I would personally get Outflank, mostly because I do like characters that can cast spells and fight at the same time. And as a Mystic THEURGE, either Angel or Lich, you have enough buffs to easily allow you to do this. But you kinda have two ways to progress the build now as far as the feat selection. I know some don't enjoy meleeing with their spellcasters, they just want to cast some spells. So the martial feats like Outflank and the other ones I'll get, Weapon Focus, Dazzling Display and Shatter Defenses, are kinda going to be useless for you. So what you want to do now, if you just want to cast spells, is to get started on more meta magic feats, especially Bolster. Spell Penetration is of no use to us because the Conjuration spells all ignore spell resistance, and later the Mythic spells, which we'll be getting as early as level 10, well, they also ignore spell resistance, so... One thing I like about this build is that, as usual, it is very versatile, and we can just choose the path you prefer. I'll personally go with Outflank here because it's such an amazing feat overall, especially when your whole team has it, pets included. For more level 3 spells, Thinking Cloud and Displacement. You know, spells like Resist Energy Communal, Protection from Energy Communal, just leave them to your Cleric Divine side. For your first level 4 wizard spells, Greater False Life and Greater Invisibility. So at this point, level 10, you most likely already have Mythic rank 3 and have already merged with either Lich or Angel. So you will already be able to cast level 5 Lich or Angel spells, and normal spells too. Your normal spell selection now is mostly going to be just buffs because we can already have the Mythic spells. So while it may seem that we are still progressing slowly, that's because I'm keeping Mythic and normal progression separate for building purposes. For your level 11 feat, well, if you want the martial path, then at this point I would pick, you know, Weapon of Focus, Dazzling Display, and then Shatter Defenses at 15. But there's, you know, Persistent and Bolster spell. Anyways, I like the martial side because I truly enjoy characters that can do everything, especially since we can actually cast both Arcane and Divine spells for the ultimate buffing. When it comes to the weapon to focus in, well, you have two choices, either Bardiche for the Death's Consonant Bardiche to add your intelligence modifier to attack and damage, or Great Axe for the Gravesinger Great Axe, which has the best critical range combined with the best critical damage in the game. And at this point, level 11, we are already at chapter 3, so we can find both of these weapons easily. Your other level 4 spells can be anything, Dimension Door, Enlarged Person Mass. As for the first level 5 spells, Echolocation is a must, the same with Genie Kind, although I'm not going to be getting Elemental Barrage with this build. It is something you can do if you want the true ultimate melee damage when combining all spells possible. Anyways, I'd pick Stone Skin Communal for the buffs. For our level 13 feat, since I'm going the martial side, Dazzling Display, although we aren't going to be using this, just for Shatter Defenses. For level 6 spells, Greater Heroism. Transformation is actually kind of fun because it can set our base attack bonus to that of a fighter, regardless of class combination. So even at level 20 we can have 20 base attack bonus, the only downside is that of course it's going to block your spellcasting. Then for level 15 feat, Shatter Defenses as I said before, being able to hit the enemy's flat-footed armor class is always a boon. Then for more level 6 spells, the animal buffs, leave them to Cleric instead. besides Cat's Grace, which clerics don't get, so pick this one here. For Hellfire Ray, I don't think it is needed. You know, we have the Lich or the Angel spells for uber damage. I'd pick Greater Dispel Magic here, because it's gonna be a while before we have the level 9 Lich spells for the automated spell. As for your first level 7 spells, Legendary Proportions to buff allies and Firebrand if you want Elemental Barrage. The other ones will depend on if Lich or Angel, so if you went with Angel, then you definitely want Icy Body for the immunity to critical hits and some other stuff. If you went Lich, however, it's kinda useless because you have a Lich spell that does the same. Now, starting from level 16, your progression will depend on if you went Lich or Angel. So, if you went with Lich, at this point you can already cast all the Wizard and the Lich spells up to level 9 in the game. The same if you went with Angel, you already have all the Divine spells, no point in going with Cleric. So what you want to do is pick the opposite. If you went with Angel, get Wizard levels until level 20, so we can also get level 9 spells for Wizards, and vice versa with Cleric. As this build went Lich, we want to go with Cleric until 20. At level 17 I'd get Improved Critical and Great Axe, because the Gravesinger Axe is truly OP. Your last feat at level 19 can truly be anything you want. Like I said, this build isn't exactly feat starved, especially if you went the caster path, because you don't need some martial feats here. I'd personally pick Bolster Spell, just to enhance our spell damage even further, but you can of course also pick Bolster earlier, ideally at level 9 or 11 if you want more caster power early on. And at level 20 we have our last level in Clerical Wizard for true level 9 spells in both classes. It just doesn't show here because, you know, we're still missing Mythic Progression, which highly boosts our spellcasting. Alright, so now let's talk about Mythic Progression for our Mystic THEURGE. Well, it's the usual. If you want more melee power close to the Abyss for the extra gore attack, and with this build we truly have all of the buffs to highly enhance its damage. Otherwise, Instrument of Freedom for the nice holy damage buff to allies. It doesn't work on your character. I kinda like the idea of a Mystic THEURGE being the ultimate buffer, so I'm going with Instrument of Freedom. Your first mythic, you know, it's an absolute given, Abundant Casting. Not because it is the most effective for most spellcasters, but especially for a Mystic THEURGE, because it will increase the slots of both your Divine and Arcane spells at the same time. Even better for us. For Mythic rank 2, extra Mythic ability, and then since we have somewhat delayed spellcasting compared to a normal caster, there's not much of a point into picking Improved Abundant Casting, as we won't have level 4 spells at this point in the game. So what we want to do is pick Enduring spells here instead. As I said before, this build is probably the ultimate buffer in the whole game as far as spells, and we do want our spells to last as long as possible. For Mythic rank 3, this is when I would get Improved Abundant Casting, as we are now merging with either Lich or Angel for much faster spellcasting progression. So we will have level 4 and 5 spells and level 6 spells soon enough. Then of course be sure to merge either Wizard or Cleric, depending on your Mythic. Since I went Lich, we also get our Skeleton Champion, and you know, it's the usual, the same as my Lich King build. Marksman for the ranged advantage, and a higher focus on Dexterity, which the Skeleton is best at. Your first Lich power is going to depend on if you want more martial power, combined with your ultimate spells, or more spell power. So if you want more martial power, the same as the Lich King, start with Fear Control. If you want more spell power, I'd actually go with Withering Life here. There's a pretty fun combo you can do with this and the Magic Missile spell, since every Magic Missile proc is going to drain the enemy's Strength, Dexterity, and Constitution, or Intelligence, Wisdom, and Charisma. Ideally you want Strength, Dexterity, and Constitution. It is true that most of the bosses in the game are immune to ability damage, but a lot of strong unique enemies and most of the common enemies are not, like the Dragon Devourer, Vavakia Vanguards, Mythic Balors, and so on. So I think it can be pretty fun, especially since we are spamming a lot of spells when combining our spellbook. Eclipse Chill, I'm not much of a fan of it, because you know it has a saving throw, and being vulnerable to cold damage is kinda useless for a Lich. Negative Energy though can help, but our main Negative Energy spell only comes at level 9, which is Negative Eruption. The other Lich offensive spells have untyped damage. And as for Deadly Magic, you can also pick this earlier, but eventually your Phylactery is going to grant you free uses of it. Plus, early on, the spellcasting enemies aren't that troublesome. At least not to me. But you know, it is a choice if you want to shut enemy cultists that cast spells or demon spellcasters down. Anyways, Deadly Magic, Eclipse Chill, or Withering Life if you want a more spellcaster focus, or Fear Control for the martial side. Also, both Deadly Magic and Eclipse Chill have very low durations of just 3 rounds, which I find a big bummer. It's kinda why I prefer Withering Life. For Mythic rank 4, extra mythic ability, and greater abundant casting. So at around this level we are very close to level 7 Lich or Angel spells depending on the merge you chose. And both are very strong, so we want as many slots we can as possible. Then the usual skeletal fighter, scatter defenses to bypass feat requirements, longbow, and bow training. For mythic rank 5, greater enduring spells. So now we already have X maximum spell slots as possible through the abundant line, and then also 24-hour durations for most of our spells. Liches have the Dark Rites boost, which also helps a lot when it comes to overcoming our lower caster level due to delayed progression as a Mystic Theurge, especially for buffs. Starting from Mythic level 6 onwards, the progression is more up to you depending on your heavier spellcasting or melee focus. Improved Initiative is always a nice choice, since we are basically a spell lord. And then there's also Expanded Arsenal into Necromancy if you went with Lich. You can even pick Elemental Barrage at this point because you already have Firebrand and Genie Kind. And of course, Ever Ready. So it's kind of versatile here. Since my previous Lich King build already had a heavy melee focus, I'll be going for a more caster one, at least for the Mythic progression here, and pick Expanded Arsenal and into Necromancy, but remember you can always respec your character for Necromancy focus. So then you would instead pick Mythic spell focus into Necromancy here. For another Lich power, Weapon of Death for the melee side, and if you went with Withering Life before, well, either Deadly Magic or Eclipse Stew. At this point we already get Negative Eruption, our main negative energy spell, which can combo quite nicely with Eclipse Stew. So let's pick it. For Mythic level 7, I have a hard time not picking Ever Ready here because of how useful it is overall. But you can also go with Elemental Barrage for like the ultimate melee damage. As for Mythic rank 8, either Mythic Improved Initiative or Mythic Improved Critical. Since this build has the super OP Great Axe, I'll be going with Mythic Improved Critical. Then you can choose between Skeleton Cleric, Inquisitor or Magus. I kinda prefer the Cleric. For Mythic level 9, you can actually go with Favorite Meta Magic and then pick like Bolstered to reduce the cost to 0, which helps a lot since we are getting a lot of exsanguinate casts with our Lich, even as Cleric spells. But you know, there's always Elemental Barrage. Even Archmage Armor if you want higher armor class, which doesn't really matter for us. For your last Lich power, well, I guess if you went with a full caster, Indestructible Bones can work here too, or you know, Deadly Magic, but we already have our Phylactery at this point. Still, it's even more uses of Deadly Magic. The choice really is up to you. As for your last Mythic rank, at 10, well, you know, Mythic Improved Initiative, or you can get Mythic Spell Focus into Necromancy or Conjuration. Now, when it comes to gear for our Mystic Theurge build, well, Amulet is, you know, Velex's Magnifying Amulet, as always. Besides that, Amulets of Natural Armor or that increase initiative. We can't really wear any armor at all because of the Ecclesia Urge. The robe slot, the Robe of the Seven Sins is by far the besting slot for most caster characters now, but especially for a Mystic Theurge because just like the Dark Rites Lich ability, this also increases your caster level by 3, which matters because we have 2 spellcasting classes. So with just that, our Cleric caster level will already become 20, then 22 with Darkest Rites. As for Wizards, we'll have a total of 27, except we still have our Arcanist exploit to increase it even further by 2 levels. For the belts, you know, belts that increase strength and also constitution early game, and after the Lich transformation, dexterity and strength. The glove slots is pretty customizable. We have a Aurelius embroidered glove, as usual, which is the best defensive one, but you can also go with Fencer's Gift if you went with a 2-handed weapon like I did. The gloves of the Enduring Wizard, which grant you 20 temporary hit points whenever you cast a level 7 or higher spell, and well, we have 2 spell books filled with level 7 or higher spells. And the Twisted Temptation gloves too, for the debuffing effects to will saving throws, even if you don't use enchantment spells. When it comes to boots, we know as always, Ronak Sacrifice. This isn't exactly a charging character, so I wouldn't bother with the boots of Stampede. For helmets, at the early game, be sure to go with headbands that increase your intelligence. After that, headbands of both intelligence and wisdom. And lastly, Mental Perfection ones that increase all your mental stats, Darkness Caress being the best by far. For the goggles slot, the goggles of Piercing Gaze are the most versatile ones, not only for the damage boost against demons, but also the massive +10 competence boost to Persuasion. But you can also go with the Glasses of Undeniable Truth, and then combine them with the Robe of Unspeakable Truth for the circumstance boost to wisdom and also intelligence. Plus, you can actually find both of these items way earlier than the Robe of the 7 Sins. Around chapter 3, I believe. 7 Sins is like chapter 4 or 5. Eventually I would prefer the 7 Sins robes though. As for cloaks, just like my Lich King build, the special Lich Mythic Cloak, the Bound of Possibility, if you want to boost the stats of your undead allies by massive amounts. Otherwise, the Cloak of Darkest Rite, to increase the difficulty class of your spells. For the rings, you know, the first is always the Ring of Evasion to avoid area of effect damage. And second, I think the Bane of Spirit ring is really thematic for a Lich character. So this ring can actually convert all of your damage to force. Not just your damage, you know, you can use the ability on any party member even if they aren't wearing the ring. This does matter a lot because force damage is irresistible. Perfect for melee characters and other spellcasters as well. Especially non-mythic ones who don't have mythic spells to bypass enemies' resistances. For the braces, you know, your phylactery is always going to be the best, but it is late game only. Besides that, you have, you know, braces of armor. Now when it comes to your weapons, well, I actually went once again with the Gravesinger Great Axe here. I know for my Cleric build it was a Battle Axe. You can actually choose if it's going to become a Battle Axe or Great Axe. Great Axe has higher damage, I apologize for that. Anyways, this weapon has a massive boost to critical range, 15 to 20 with improved critical, while also retaining higher critical damage from Great Axes, so we have ×5 here with a Scald, quite powerful. Also, the Quarterstaff of the War Mage for the +2 bonus to difficulty class of your spells. And lastly, the Plague of Madness Quarterstaff. Kinda good to spam spells, especially the Exsanguinate Lich Mythic spell since we have quite a lot of slots for it, including from our Cleric spellbook. Whenever you cast the same spell 3 times in a row, the next spell becomes both empowered and maximized for free. So it's kinda like the Grandmaster's Rod, except well, this doesn't have a limit on uses. For a Lich it's simple because most of your spells, the ones that you want to spam anyways, are the same, like Fist of Blood, Exsanguinate, Negative Eruption, so I will be spamming them a lot. As far as your Quickslots, very important for any spellcaster, we have a focus on Metamagic Rods to further empower our spells since we have so many of them. First, the Greater Quicken is a must. This way you can quicken Corrupt Magic, Negative Eruption, even Fist of Blood, to cast these spells twice per round. The Grandmaster's Rod, as usual, for both empower and maximize to any spell. Note that it won't increase the power of your Negative Eruption because this is 10 per level, so there's no dice rolled here. On the other hand, it does increase the damage of Fist of Blood, Exsanguinate, and Siphon Life, your main Lich damage spells besides Negative Eruption. The Rod of Magical Affinity is a new item from the latest DLC, the Treasure of the Midnight Isles, just like the Robe of the 7 Sins and the Glasses of Truth. It has limited uses that won't recharge, but can actually empower, heighten, bolster and maximize a spell at the same time. Extend Metamagic Rods and lesser extents to increase the duration of your buffs, later turn them into 24 hours, with greater enduring spells, even 1 round level buffs like Haste. Lastly, the Skeletal Finger for the synergy with the Lich class. Don't forget the Devouring Lust Metamagic Rods too, achievable as early as chapter 3, for 6 uses of maximized spell for free of any spell level. This rod is amazing. Well friends, so this was it for my Mystic THEURGE dual caster build. I hope you've enjoyed this guide, and if you did, please remember to like, subscribe and even consider becoming a channel member to request some exclusive content. Thank you for watching and see you next time, friends.